Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. Donald Trump's tariffs are going to have a major impact on the South African auto industry. On the 26th of March, President of the United States, Donald Trump, issued a proclamation imposing a 25% tariff under Section 232 of the Trade and Expansion Act of 1962 on imports of automobiles and certain automobile parts, citing a critical threat to U.S. national security. The tariffs will apply to final assembled automobiles entered for consumption or withdrawn from warehouse for consumption on the 3rd of April 2025. Tariffs on automobile parts will go into effect at a time to be specified in a forthcoming Federal Register notice, but no later than the 3rd of May 2025, with one exception, which is USMCA certified parts, which will not be covered until a process is established. USMCA certified parts are components that meet the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement rules of origin, qualifying them for preferential tariff treatment when traded between the three countries. These rules aim to promote regional manufacturing and ensure compliance with labor and environmental standards. The proclamation notes that these tariffs will continue in effect unless such actions are expressly reduced, modified, or terminated. So this was an announcement that Donald Trump made during the week, and it appears that this announcement is going to have a bearing on the South African auto industry. These 25% Trump tariffs on imports of vehicles and light trucks are going to be bad news for South Africa's auto manufacturing industry. And it's going to be tricky because they are happening at a time when the economy was already growing slowly. The last data shared showed a growth rate of 0.6% in the last quarter, and there is a major dispute about the budget and a VAT increase of 0.5 percentage points. And if you take those together, a slowing growth, an increase in VAT, that could really slow down the economy much further this year. And if the auto industry is affected in a negative way, that's definitely going to be something that is detrimental. So, according to industry experts, this Section 232 tariff, ushered in by the U.S. Trade Expansion Act, actually overrides any existing trade agreements, meaning that South African-built vehicles will be taxed at the same rate as those from non-AGOA nations. So basically the same rate as the EU nation cars and other cars that are being tariffed by Trump. This is according to Paulina Mamukgobo, the chief economist at the Automotive Business Council, NAMASA. Right. To get an understanding of the impact, let's look at the data. The South African auto sector provides 116,000 highly skilled manufacturing jobs and 500,000 other formal jobs in the automotive value chain, taking it up to 616,000 jobs in total if you include the rest of the value chain. In the last reported 3 months period, Stats South Africa manufacturing data indicated that motor vehicles, parts and accessories, and other transport equipment manufacturing sales amounted to 126.92 billion. 126.92 billion, which represented 15% of sales from the manufacturing sector. The automotive industry accounts for 5.3% of South Africa's gross domestic product. So it's quite a sizable sector, and you can see from the data that it's significant. Now, how does this tie into America? The South African automotive industry is a large exporter to the USA, particularly in the supply of light vehicles and automotive components. They have been able to do this historically because of the American Growth and Opportunity Act, which is a preferential trade agreement which allows for duty-free access of certain goods and products into the USA. South Africa exported a total of 390,000 vehicles in 2024, 25,553 of them to the United States of America directly. In 2023, exports of vehicles and auto components to the US were valued at $27 billion. rands. The US is the third largest destination for South African automotive exports, behind Germany and Belgium. South African automotive exports to the US have actually been increasing year on year, and from 2001 to 2023, they've increased by 497%. So you can see that, yeah, South Africa does have a big share in terms of exports to America, auto vehicle exports, and this new tariff is going to have a significant impact. In fact, Angela Cornett, I think that's how you pronounce her name, the head of communications at BMW Group South Africa, said free trade and international cooperation were the drivers of growth and jobs. And then she said, we cannot overemphasize the importance of policies like AGOA for the continued success of BMW Group South Africa. This relationship is crucial for our ability to continue manufacturing vehicles and providing jobs in South Africa. Professor Raymond Parsons of the Northwest University Business School said, we know that the automotive sector and agriculture in particular have the biggest stake in the AGOA duty-free regime. ABSA corporate and investment banking economist Peter Worthington said, the impact on South Africa of losing AGOA benefits would affect mainly exports of vehicles, manufactured foodstuffs, and beverages. He said the following, the two most important export categories benefiting from AGOA preferences are the automotive sector and the various food and beverage sectors. Fundamentally, these new Trump 232 tariffs are actually basically superseding AGOA, meaning that all of these comments that have been made about AGOA and the automotive industry from BMW, from various other actors, now actually apply because the automotive sector has now been affected. Those exports are going to become expensive on the American side and then less likely to be purchased by American consumers, affecting the volume of those exports over time. Effectively, Elon Musk has struck again. He's struck again because he is one of the largest automobile manufacturers in America. Tesla is one of the largest car companies right now in the world. And he is acting in ways that are trying to protect his brand and trying to advance his interests. And you can see, because of his relationship with Trump, this particular tariff is one that is supposed to help Elon and to advance his interest on the American side. And it's going to hurt South African car manufacturers, hurt European car manufacturers. And the idea is fundamentally, even if BYD dominates China, dominates other spaces, although Tesla is selling a lot of cars in those particular areas, the idea is fundamentally, if we can protect the American market, we'll be able to protect Elon's businesses in America. This is the same thing that happened with Huawei. At some point, the Americans came to appreciate that if Huawei was allowed to sell its devices in America unencumbered, that would be the end of Apple computers. And they were like, cut it, and they cut it. And since then, we've seen that Huawei has not been able to sell its devices in America for security reasons, right? So effectively, Elon has struck. And when you take this into consideration with the dynamics about South African vehicle sales in South Africa, this is coming at a time when the South African car manufacturers are struggling to deal with Chinese imports. Speaking at a National Automobile Dealers Association event early in March, the Volkswagen Group chair and managing director, Martina Bien, outlined the company's significant challenges in South Africa. Volkswagen said that local car manufacturers are undervalued in South Africa. They have little protection from cheaper imports and must pay the cost of government failures to remain operationally. And they said that this in turn is hurting investment in South Africa's motor manufacturing industry and ultimately leads to the cars costing consumers more. And this includes the additional costs imposed on manufacturers due to unreliable electricity supply, inefficient transport and logistics, and operational difficulties at the country's ports. Bini highlighted Volkswagen's recent investment in generators at its Kariga facility to mitigate the impact of inconsistent power supply. These are additional costs that manufacturers shouldn't bear, she said, and which invariably will detriment consumers. She said, we've now put two generators that cost 130 million rands because we need quite a bit of power. But every day I run those generators, it costs 1.6 million rands. She said that is added to the pricing of cars because that money must come from somewhere. Right? This is also happening at the same time that ArcelorMittal actually on the 6th of January said it would close its steel mills that produce this so-called long steel, which is made in the towns of Newcastle and Vereeniging. And it would also close its rail fabrication facility in Emalahleni because it couldn't make those facilities profitable. These operations are the only local suppliers of several products which are used in industries ranging from construction to mining to car manufacturing. Car manufacturers in South Africa have called for ArcelorMittal to be saved and for at least it to continue running for 1 year because without it, the cost of car manufacturing would increase further. Associations which represented both the automotive component makers and car manufacturers, including Volkswagen and Toyota, said that they needed at least 1 year to source alternative steel supplies. They warned that plants may close and that components made locally would need to then be imported. Right? Volkswagen actually then tried to also explain why their vehicles are more expensive than the car imports. According to BN, she said Volkswagen is only manufacturing 27,000 Polo Vivos in South Africa a year, whereas the other cars in the segment are produced in countries where 300,000 to 400,000 vehicles are manufactured annually, benefiting from the economies of scale. She said these mass-produced vehicles then enter the South African domestic market at highly competitive prices, which is making it difficult for Volkswagen and others to compete. So you can see that the SA car manufacturing industry is being hit left, right, and center. The Trump tariffs are going to hit a particular way. The ArcelorMittal issue is going to hit another way. And then there's the issue of the cheaper Chinese and Indian import vehicles, which are going to hit another way, right? As things stand, the industry is in trouble. Trump has made these exports expensive to South Africa. Haval and Mahindra are making the local sales unattractive. Many people are moving to these cars that are made by GMC and Tata in South Africa because the costs of German cars are exorbitant right now. The economy of Ramaphosa is a tough economy. The cost of living has been incredibly high. Food, fuel, electricity costs, all of these things are chowing people. And people are not able to just make ends meet. For those in the middle class who are the target market for some of these vehicles, they have also been facing extremely high costs of healthcare and also extremely high costs of private school. The private school is something that parents are not going to make a compromise on because they feel that they have to give their children a chance. So they're going to make a compromise on the car. Buying a new car, a German car, is a luxury that many cannot afford at this particular point. But there's also the other side of the equation. The Haval cars are good now. They are very good. These J-Los and whatever, I can't even remember the names of these Haval cars. But we're seeing a lot of them, Omoda and all of these cars. They're good. And sometimes they even have better features than the German cars. I've seen people posting on TikTok showing the features of their Havals. They're enjoying those cars. They're getting to be more acceptable. And that's something that's also affecting the customer buying trends in South Africa. So that's where things stand. This Trump tariff could be the final nail in the coffin. We could be in a situation in 3 to 4 years where these German car manufacturers have actually closed down in South Africa. And we have to have a conversation about that because the Chinese manufacturers said that they were going to build the cars locally, but they never did. They never did. I think a lot of the factories are not operational from what people are saying. Then we have to ask ourselves, is it a good trade-off to lose the German car manufacturing and then not gain the Chinese car manufacturing and then be buying cars from China, from India, which are not locally manufactured? The other side of the equation is all of these, international manufacturers have created the sense that South Africa makes cars. In a way, South Africa does make cars, but they're German-made cars. At what point is investment going to be put in to the manufacture of a locally made South African brand? You mean to tell me with all of these years of making cars for the Germans, that the South African manufacturing sector does not have the local skills, expertise, and know-how to make a new South African brand? Something, Ipobesi or something. You can't make, like one car. I think it's time to start thinking about that as well. To say, how do we then use all of the knowledge, all of the engineers, all of the people who've been working in these plants to make a car that is subsidized by the government to be competitive? Just use the Chinese model and then actually be able to produce that car and maybe sell it to the rest of Africa. Because at this point, we're in 2025, the car has been around for 125 years. It's been around for 125 years. Surely African nations should now be thinking about how do we make our own, as opposed to how do we let German manufacturers build plants so that they can sell to America and sell domestically, etc., etc. How do we build our own? Wenawezulu Automobiles, WZA, Wenawezulu Auto. When are we going to get that? Something to that effect. Divuo Manufacturing, Divuo Auto Manufacturing, NAM, NAM. Let's. You mean to tell me all these billionaires, the Patrice Mutsepes, all of these people, South Africa cannot make its own cars? That has to be a conversation now. That has to be a conversation. Trump is taking care of America. Everybody else is looking out for their own interests. At what point does the conversation now become, okay, what can we do to manufacture cars locally and increase the manufacturing sector? Because the other side of the equation is that the manufacturing sector counts for 14% of GDP, but only employs 9.8% of the population. Surely that number should bump up. It should be in the 25%. But you have to do that by investing in local manufacturing, not necessarily just hoping that the Germans will build more manufacturing in South Africa. It's got to move beyond that. Also, furniture manufacturing is only 4% of total manufacturing volume. That's something that has to change. Why is furniture only 4%? Why are some of these things being imported? These are conversations that we need to have. What do you think about the Donald Trump tariffs? Where do you stand on this whole issue? Let's have a conversation. Till the next one, in the comments. I'm going to be there.